Comet, the new solitaire game from Brad Smith, is about the famous World War II escape line, which escorted hundreds of Allied airmen through occupied Europe and to safety. This network of safe houses and guides, many of them teenage girls, was founded by the 24-year-old Andre de Jong. This was a very dangerous undertaking. Infiltration by the Gestapo was frequent and unavoidable. Over 800 members of the Comet Line were arrested, and of those, 300 were executed or died in concentration camps. Brad's design recognizes the grim nature of this business, while still celebrating the courage of these extraordinary people. It's a hopeful game, but also a somber one, and I try to reflect that mix in the game's graphic design. So here's a game at setup. At the start of every turn, you choose one of your guides to serve as an organizer. Their guide rating, 1, 2, or 3 stars, will determine how many actions you get this turn. Guides also are restricted to specific routes. Andre de Jong, codenamed Didi, has a lot more flexibility, so I'd love to use her as a guide and let someone else be the organizer, but the other Andre, codenamed Nadine, will only give me 2 actions, and Florentino has a rating of 3, but can't serve as organizer. He was a Basque smuggler, adept at navigating treacherous mountain passes and pitch darkness, but day-to-day logistics were not his thing. So I select Didi and draw 5 cards. One of these is a gray adversity card. I either let this event take place, or I spend an action and eliminate a card from my hand to ignore it. I need that safe house in Spain, so I spend an action and a card to ignore that event. Now we're on to our actions phase, where we have 2 actions left. We could play a card, place a safe house, place a new airman counter, or move an infiltration chit. For now, let's just play a couple of cards. This one lets us place a safe house and move an infiltration chit from the resolution cup, setting it aside. We begin the game with exactly one of those chits in the cup, so getting it out would be really helpful. For our last action, we place a new guide who can handle the middle route, the only one we haven't got covered. In our next step, we assign our 3 guides to routes, and now we have the option of attempting to move airmen. We choose an area, then choose a destination, and draw a chit for each route that we use. If we draw an infiltration chit, they're captured. So because we've already removed the only infiltration chit in the cup, we know our first attempt is going to succeed, so we're going to move the guys in Brussels all the way to Spain. After resolving this, we check for infiltration. Each chit is compared to that guide's rating, and if it's larger, we gain infiltration equal to the difference. So that's 2 more infiltration chits in the cup. And the ones we use for this attempt don't go back in the cup yet. Now we try Paris to Spain. We're successful, and the low chit values mean no additional infiltration. Okay, last one, Bayonne to Spain. And there's that infiltration chit. So Florentino is eliminated. Almost every guide has a special effect which triggers when they're eliminated. In Florentino's case, he goes to the discard pile instead of being removed from the game. The infiltration chit moves into the Bayonne space, getting further embedded within our network. In our next phase, we try to bring the boys home. We bring back up to as many as the chit we draw. At the end of the turn, we do some administrative steps. For example, checking the number of infiltration chits against a rating for that area's controller. These are the folks handling the complicated logistical work within a zone. And that's our first turn. Turn 2, we follow those steps again. We assign an organizer, we draw 5 cards. I could spend actions and cards to ignore these 2 adverse events, but I'm not going to be moving around Route 3 this turn anyway. And I can absorb the loss of a safe house, so I let them happen. This gives me 3 actions. First, I'm going to set aside that infiltration chit in Bayonne. Then I'm going to place a new airman. This is free if it's in Brussels, but costs a resource point if I place it in Paris, and 2 if Bayonne. At this point in the game, I'm getting 1 resource point per turn, so I'm going to use it. Finally, I use Emil Whitmer to remove an infiltration chit. You'll notice that I drew this green card at the start of the turn. This is an MI9 support card, and after the action phase, it goes in this box. Now, at any time, I can flip this card to use this ability, and I'm planning on using it next turn. I attempt to move from Paris to Bayonne, stopping short, remember, because of that flooding event ruling out the move from Bayonne to Spain. Now there's still one infiltration chit in the cup, so this might not work, but luckily it does. Start of turn 3, I need a guide to cover Route 3, so Dee Dee's not organizer this time around. This only gives me 2 actions, so I better make them count. This Betrayer card removes an airman counter from Brussels, but there isn't one. It also adds an infiltration chit to the cup, but I can manage that, so I let the event take place. On my action phase, I use this card to place a counter in Paris. Then I use this card to spend a resource point, moving a counter from Bayonne to Spain. This means I've got just one move to perform, Paris to Spain. It succeeds, but at a pretty high infiltration cost. I call up my pals at MI9 and get both counters home. That's 4. One more and I'll start getting another resource point each turn. This was the last turn for 1941, which means it's time to form a new deck. MI9 cards, a stack of new events, the discarded pile, and the remaining draw pile are shuffled together. There will be new opportunities and new challenges, some of which are very unforgiving. So I pulled off 4 rescues in 3 turns. To win, I need at least 11 more in the 10 turns that remain. But that supply of infiltration chits is running low, and if it gets exhausted, the line is completely compromised and will collapse, and I'll lose the game. I'll need to spend some time managing that, and that's time I'm not spending on the move. All of Brad's games see you balancing competing factors and making the best decision you can in an environment where your control is limited. In this case, it also creates a gripping narrative and empathy for ordinary people doing extraordinary things in difficult times.